means to solve. Solve, but when you're solving, you're plugging in for x. Okay, so you're going to plug in for x. So if I'm going to plug in for x, that means wherever x is, I plug in what in this problem?
10.
10. There's only one x, so how many 10s am I going to plug in? 1. So it's going to be f of 10 equals negative 2 times the square root of 10 minus 6 plus 12. Because you're at school and you have a calculator, if you're not strong at doing this type of math in your head, please use the calculator. You grab the calculator, press calculate, and you're going to put in, what was it? I'm sorry.
Negative 2 times the square root of 10 minus 6 plus 12.
And when I put in the calculator, it would do all the work for me. But at home, you need to realize that this is saying 10 minus 6 is, square root of 4 is, negative 2 times 2 is, plus 12 is, and the calculator is going to do the same thing for you. Because the calculator is going to follow the rules of PEMDAS. Yes, no, maybe so. Do you remember this? Awesome. All right, so it should be, so the answer would be 8. All right, so are we comfortable with solving? Solving means we plug in for what? X. So solving means we plug in for x. Next we have f of x equals 10. When it says solve for x, that means you're plugging in for y. So wherever y or f of x is, that's where you plug in that value. So f of x is going to become 10. We're going to substitute. So 10 equals negative 2 times the square root of x minus 6 plus 12. So at this point, my goal is to get what by itself? X. So I need to get x by itself. So this little thing wants to be all alone. He doesn't want any friends around. So my first step is to do what?
Subtract 12.
Minus 12. I'm going to subtract 12. What I do to one side, I do to the other side. So I end up with negative 2 equals negative 2 times the square root of x minus 6. Because this goes up. Is x by itself yet?
No.
No. So what do I divide by what? Negative 2. Because remember we're doing SADMEP. When you're solving, you're doing SADMEP. PEMDAS backwards. So what's negative 2 divided by negative 2? 1. So I have 1 equals the square root of x minus 6. I square both sides. The only way to set free a square root is to square. So when I square, it sets it free. So 1 squared is just, and I'm left with 1 equals x minus 6. And what does that lead to? X equals 7. Because I could add 6, but I know the only number that I can subtract 6 from to get 1 is 7. Do we remember this?
Yes.
Are we comfortable with this? Yes? All right, perfect. So now we're going to go to find. When you see the word find, that's the equivalent form of evaluate. So evaluate means we do what again, don't say? We plug in for x. So evaluate means we plug in for x. But notice we have a friend that we talked a little more about this year. Inverse. So before we plug in for x, we got to switch what? There you go. We have to switch x and y. Alright, so before we plug in for x, we have to switch x and y. So, and my problem is now going to be x equals negative 2 times the square root of y minus 6 plus 12. Now I plug in for x. Because now I did the first thing, which was to find the inverse. Now I can evaluate. So, x now is, so 0 equals negative 2 times the square root of y minus 6 plus 12. What does this look similar to?
B.
Part B, right? The one we just did. Just like when we solve for x, It's the same process when we solve for y with the inverse. So what are we going to do? So in this problem, I subtract 12. When I subtract 12, I end up with negative 12 equals negative 2 times the square root of y minus 6. Now what do I do? Divide the negative 2, right? When I divide negative 2, I end up with a positive 6 because negative 12 divided by negative 2 is positive 6. Now what do I do? Alright, and 6 squared is what? 6 squared is 36 equals y minus 6. I have to add 6. So y equals what?
42.
How do we feel about it? So we remember this process and concepts from Algebra 1 and Algebra 2. All you're doing is working with PEMDAS, whether it's working with it forward or working with it backwards. When you evaluate, you're doing PEMDAS in order, right? When you are solving, you're doing PEMDAS backwards. You're doing SADMEP. Okay? And just because it becomes a fraction doesn't mean the problem changes. It's a fraction, just means that we may not like fractions, but it's the same process. So evaluate tells me to do what? Plug in for x. So this is going to become x. So g of 5 equals 8 over 5 plus 3 minus 11. This is 8 over 8 minus 11 equals 1 minus 11. What is that? Okay? Is it necessary to go through these two steps if you know what you're doing? No. You could look at this problem and say, well, 8 divided by 8 is 1. 1 minus 11 is negative 10. If you're not, what should you do to this problem? Put it in the calculator. This isn't your strong suit because at this point, this is a minor part of our problem. There's a bigger problem that we want to solve by doing this step first. All right? So, was that fraction a big deal? No. All right, g of x equals 5. So we are plugging in for y. Okay, so I'm going to plug in for y. So 5 equals 8 over x plus 3 minus 11. What is step uno?
Plus 11. Add 11 to...
Add 11. What I do to one side, I'm going to do to the... So I have 16 equals... How do I move a binomial out of the denominator?
Add a...
How do I move a binomial out of the denominator? Multiply. I would multiply by the reciprocal, but it just means that there's a 1 beneath. So is it necessary for me to write that? No. What I do to one side, I have to do to the... So now I have 16 times x plus 3 equals... What's left? 8. I have two choices here. I can distribute the 16 or I can divide by the 16. Either way, I'm going to end with the same answer. So if I divide by the 16, I'm now left with x plus 3 equals what? 0.5. Is it okay if I write it as 1/2? And then my final step would be to subtract the 3. So when I subtract the 3, I'm left with x equals 1/2 minus 3. So what is that?
Oh.
It would be a negative 2.5. Either negative 2.5 or x equals negative 5/2. Either answer would be correct. How do you feel? How do we move a binomial out of the denominator? You multiply by the reciprocal, which just means you multiply both sides by whatever it is. And it's not just only a binomial. Whenever there is any type of binomial, trinomial, or polynomial period in the denominator, to move it out of the denominator, you just multiply. Because it's division, and the opposite of division is multiplication. All right, what are our steps here? So first we're going to switch x and y, and then we're going to do what?
Plug in for x.
Plug in for x. I'm going to plug in for x. So now I have x equals 8 over, is it 8? Yes. Y plus 3 minus 11. Again, it's similar to solving like we did in part B, right? What is my first step then? Plus 11. Oh, I forgot. What is x supposed to become? All right. So negative 3 plus 11 is 8. So I have 8 equals 8 over y plus 3. Now what do? Multiply by the reciprocal. So now I have 8 times y plus 3 equals 8. Now what can I do? Divide by 8. And what's 8 divided by 8? 1. So I now am down to y plus 3 equals 1. Final step. Minus 3 and y equals what? Negative 2. I want you to do problem 3 and we'll do the rest tomorrow. Thank you. Have a good day.